everybody, JC here with another T&I toy review. And today's review is in association with MarvelousNews.com, your #1 news source for everything Marvel. And for today's review, we're going to be taking a look at the upcoming Marvel Legends 6-inch scale Red Onslaught / Red Skull Build-A-Figure. Now this Build-A-Figure is part of Hasbro's newest wave of Captain America Marvel Legends figures. The wave has not yet hit retail. It should probably be out towards the end of this month or sometime next month. Now that's really more of a guess than anything, but that's when I'm thinking that this wave is going to start hitting retail shelves. So we have all the parts here in front of us. We've looked at all the figures in the wave over the last few days, and definitely would love to hear which one of the figures in the wave is your favorite or you're looking most forward to. But now we've got all the Build-A-Figure pieces, and so we're going to put this thing together and take a look at the Red Onslaught Build-A-Figure, which is, and at least for me, this is the figure I've been looking forward to the most in this wave. Okay, so we have the torso, the 2 legs, the 2 arms, the 2 shoulder pads, and the back piece and the head. So to start off, we're going to snap the legs and the torso pieces, and this is pretty easy to do, though the initial time with the legs I had to take a hairdryer to it. I was having some problems getting the legs to snap in, so I had to soften up the plastic a little bit, but once I did the hairdryer thing, they snapped right in and haven't had any issues with them since. So first thing you want to do is snap the legs in, and then snap the arms. Make sure you get the left on the left side and the right on the right side. And they snap right in. And then you want to snap on the shoulder pads, and so he's got holes on the front and on the back, and you just snap them into place. And then take this back piece, and there's a little tab on it, and you just stick it on the hole in his back. And then finally we have the head. Now before I snap on the head, some of you have been asking about whether this Red Skull head will fit on the Marvel Legends Red Skull figure that was released in the Winter Soldier line. So I have that Red Skull figure here for you, and the answer is yes. You can put that Red Skull head on the Onslaught Build-A-Figure Red Skull head. You can swap it out and put it on this one that was in the Winter Soldier line. Now you got to kind of push on hard to really get it to snap into place, but you can make it work. Now the head maybe to me is a little bit big on this body, but I guess it works for the most part. And I do like the head sculpt. I like this new Onslaught head sculpt for the Red Skull better than the one that they included with the Winter Soldier figure. But again, you can see it's a little bit bigger than that head, so it does look a little big on the body. Now some of you also asked about whether you could fit the Red Skull head on one of the suited bodies for like either the Chameleon or the Agent Coulson figure, and again the answer is technically you can get it on there, but again the head to me on these bodies looks way too big and just doesn't look right. So I mean technically you can put it on there, but I don't think it looks very good. I know where you guys are going. You know, sometimes you see the Red Skull in just a suit, but I don't think this works very well. Now you can always, I think this should probably fit. If you wanted to take the Red Skull head from the Winter Soldier figure, you could stick it on there, and that looks a bit better, you know, because that's a smaller head. So if you were looking for a Red Skull, if you wanted to do a Red Skull with a suit, you could take that Winter Soldier Red Skull head and stick it on either your Chameleon figure or your Agent Coulson figure. I think it looks probably better on the Agent Coulson figure just because the black suit is more fitting for the Red Skull, I think. It is a little loose on this one. The ball's not quite as big on this figure, so you may have to find something to kind of help fill that hole up if you wanted to do that. Okay, so getting back to the Red Skull or the Red Onslaught figure itself, we'll pop the head on. And again, I had to take a hairdryer initially to get this to pop in, but once I did that, it did fit on there nice and tight. Okay, so here's a look at the Red Onslaught fully assembled, and I've got to say this figure looks pretty good. I've been personally, I've been waiting for this version of Onslaught for, well, most of this version, minus the Red Skull head, but this body for the Onslaught character for a long time. Back in the day, Toy Biz did an Onslaught Build-A-Figure, but they did his a different version, not this original version, which was kind of disappointing. The version they did was not one I was terribly impressed with, and I'd always wanted this one, as I know many of you as well have. Now, again, this is the red Onslaught with the Red Skull head. As you probably know, we are going to be getting the more traditional Magneto-style head in the upcoming X-Men Legends wave that should be released later this year. We saw the head sculpt at New York Comic Con, and so we are going to be getting an alternate head for this figure at a later date. So anyway, figure itself, paint applications are pretty basic. It's not a lot of shading or anything. Got a little bit of shading down here on his legs, but otherwise it's pretty basic, and a little bit up here on his arms as well, but otherwise it's pretty basic with just a basic red, and then this kind of purplish color for his armor pieces, his shoulder pads, his gloves, and his boots, and around his belt and such, and his back piece as well. And then you've got a little bit of shading, like I said, on these grooves on his legs, on the inner grooves as well, and then up here on his arms. Now there's some nice shading on the head. I think they did a really nice job with this Red Skull head. This is definitely one of my more favorite Red Skull heads that they've done, and as I mentioned before, I think it does look better than the Red Skull head that they did for that Winter Soldier figure. I like the teeth, I like the grin, I like the eyes, I like the shading with the red on the head, on the forehead and everything. So I think the head on this looks really good, and that they've done a really nice job. So this figure stands, if you count to the top of his head, is just about 8 inches, but if you count up to this collar piece that goes up behind his head, then it's really about 8¼ inches, almost 8½ inches. Yeah, about 8¼ I would say, as far as his total height. Now in the Axis story, Red Skull was actually he was a very big character, like almost like a Sentinel height type character, but there were a few times where he took a more human-sized size, and that's what this figure is based on, obviously. And I'd say the scale is pretty good. Here he is next to the Marvel Legends Magneto, and you can see Magneto comes up to about his midsection. Maybe Magneto's head's a little bit over his midsection, but that seems to be pretty good scale from what I remember in the Magneto comics when Magneto first confronts Red Onslaught. Okay, and here's the Red Onslaught with some other Onslaught figures that have been done over the years. So this is the Toy Biz Build-A-Figure one that I mentioned before, and this one is a little bit taller. Of course, it also depends on how straight you do the legs. His legs are kind of horse legs, and they really kind of bend, so you can actually have this figure be hunched down a little bit more. It's a nice figure, and it's for this look of Onslaught, which was a look that he sported later on in the comics. It's a nice looking figure. I just don't like this design for the Onslaught character. And then this is an old Toy Biz 5-inch scale Onslaught figure that was done a long time ago, and this is the more traditional, Magneto with the Magneto head sculpt. And obviously this new Build-A-Figure is taller, but just wanted to give you some comparisons with some previous Onslaught figures that have been done. And I'm kind of curious, when we get the Magneto head in the X-Men Legends wave coming up later this year, I wonder if they'll give us a different back piece too. In the original storyline with Onslaught, I think it was the X-Men character, Cable from an alternate universe. At first I was thinking it was Franklin Richards, but I think this is actually X-Men, but he gets basically trapped inside the Onslaught body, and you can see his head's like sticking out the back. And so you see they added that feature on this 5-inch version of the figure, and I'm just curious if they'll do anything similar for the Build-A-Figure version later on. And just for one more comparison, here's a look at the Red Onslaught with some other more recent Hasbro Build-A-Figures. And so we've got the Hulkbuster figure, which remains the tallest, and then we've got the recently released Absorbing Man Build-A-Figure from that latest Spider-Man Legends, and that one's about the same height as Red Onslaught. Onslaught's maybe a hair taller, but they're pretty close to the same height. And then the Thanos Build-A-Figure, which is definitely the shortest of the bunch. Okay, so articulation on this figure is okay, but it is probably the weakest part of the figure. The head is on a ball joint. It's actually a ball hinge joint, but really because it's kind of, the head's in this big collar thing, it doesn't have a whole lot of movement. You can look left and he can look right a little bit, but he really doesn't have any up or down movement. You can kind of pivot the head to the left and the right, but again, getting it to move, getting your fingers in there to move, it's hard, and it really just doesn't have a whole lot of movement. And then the arms are movement, the arms are attached with the ball hinge joints, but they're kind of restricted with these shoulder pads. So you can get forward, but you can't get it over his head. Now you can remove the shoulder pads if you want to give him more movement, but then he doesn't look quite right. And that's about as far back as he can get. And that's about, you've got a little movement, a little bit of up and down movement with the shoulder pads, so you can get his arm out about that much. Now he does have a bicep swivel. He's only got a single hinged elbow, so he can only bend his elbow about that much. He does have swivels at the elbow, and then he's got, let's see, I believe he's also got swivels at the glove cuff as well. So he's got a number of rotation joints there on the arm. He's also got swivels on the wrists. He's got hinges on the hand, but really don't have a whole lot of up and down movement with the hand. That's about as much up and down as you get. He's got an ab crunch joint, but he can't really crunch down very much. That is about as down as he can go. He does rotate there at that midsection, and he can kind of pivot to the left and right as well. That's about as far back as he can look. The back piece also limits that to some degree. Legs are attached with ball joints, so he can get his leg forward good. He can do the splits about that much and can't really do his leg back very much. Does have the thigh swivel. Does have double jointed knees, so he does have good bending at the knee. And then he's only got up and down. He's got pretty good up and down movement. Now these joints are kind of tight when I first got it, but they've loosened up some. So he's got good down movement. He doesn't have that's about as up as he can get because he's got these little grooves on his armor that limit the up movement. And then he does have ankle pivot and 2 peg holes on the bottom of his feet. Okay, so that's my review. Overall, I like the figure. I like the sculpting detail. The paint applications are okay. They're not super detailed, but I think they're pretty good for the most part. Size, I think the size is decent. Maybe a little extra more size to it, maybe Hulkbuster size, but overall I'm pretty happy. If you put him up next to like the Magneto figure, I think the scale works pretty well from what we saw in the comics. Now the thing is, really, for the most part with the Red Onslaught, we didn't see him in regular human form that often. I think it was only for like a brief minute in the Magneto comic. Most times he was in a much larger, Sentinel size form, and it would be cool if we got a figure in that size someday, but I'm for the most part pretty happy with it being in the regular size, and definitely happy that we're going to be getting the Magneto style head in the X-Men Legends. Now one thing that thought had kind of crossed my mind is we don't know yet what the Build-A-Figure for the X-Men Legends line is going to be, so I kind of hope that we don't see just a reissue of the Onslaught body with the Magneto head for that line. I wouldn't think they would do that, but you never know. But otherwise, I would say I definitely like this figure. I like the head sculpt. I like the Red Skull head sculpt. I think it's a nice looking head. I prefer the more traditional Magneto head for this body, but for the Red Skull head, I think they did a nice job with it. Now the wave with this Build-A-Figure is not yet released. It should be out probably by next month, maybe even late this month. Again, I don't have a specific release date yet, though. That's just a guess. I picked this wave up early from an overseas seller so I could do reviews for you. And again, I would love to hear from you what your favorite figures in the wave, what you're looking forward to the most is, and what your thoughts on this Build-A-Figure are. So we'll have a full gallery of images up at marvelousnews.com. There's a link in the description below, and as always, leave a comment, let us know what you think. If you're so inclined, please like the video, and if you haven't already, please subscribe, and until next time, I'll catch you later.